or if there are any changes.
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion regarding the minutes? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Just a reminder that we are recording this as a public meeting, and you may not realize that when you're on the internet, but that's what it is. We've got a number of JMU leaders with us today, and I'm not going to recognize all of them, but I thank each one of them and appreciate David organizing the meeting. David, is Jim here yet?
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. Good morning, Jim.
Morning.
Great to have you. It seems like a long time since we've met, but a lot's been happening in the background. So David and I thought it might be helpful to do a couple things right off the start. Is first look at the original timeline that we set forth, and then maybe an update on where we are now. So David, are you able to pull that up for us to view?
And I'm going to ask Chris, if you don't mind, if you've got, I'll give you sharing power here. And I see Mike Stolfus is just joining us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, so this is what we went over in July of last year. If you want to flip to the next page, please. And David, you just want to maybe walk through what we've done. We had a lot of TBDs, but some of them have already been done, and we'll just mark completed and then move us up to January.
Thank you, Terry. And are you planning to go to the updated document as well? Because that'll be the clearest, I think, for us in terms of what's been actually done.
Okay, whatever you think would work best.
Is that okay with you? So Chris, if you're sorry to switch, let's move. Exactly. And I appreciate Madam Vice Rector and Board of Visitors members for when this was developed. Obviously, we had our new boss, the new president, for just a few days. And so we had obviously more of an established process at JMU, and we have updated that process as the car is moving. And so there are a few things that have been adjusted just a little bit. But I'm very excited to say, I mean, I'll just mention right off the bat, over 1,500 people have been engaged thus far in this process by the president. And we'll get to these vision teams, but many of the most dynamic leaders on campus are working through that as well. So if you see on this, we've got a lot of completed pieces. We, of course, started with listening, and President Jim, as you've heard updates all along the way, has engaged with alums all around the country. And every single college, every single division has been also engaged with in-person meetings on campus. Chris Orum's team, who's here, the Planning, Analytics, and Institutional Research team, has been collating that. President Jim has read every single comment that's come into that group, and that has been put together for us as we've engaged in terms of the pillars that the board has seen. Idea forums, all campus-wide. We had a lot of students at the last one, which was fantastic. And then just before the break, we had an all call to all of campus. We had over 200 faculty, staff, and students volunteer to be part of the vision teams that are now tackling metrics, feasibility, and exploring more broadly the themes of strategic planning. We then, together as a division heads team and with the co-chairs, narrowed that down to 50 people on campus who are now part of that. So you'll see here that we had, if we go to December, vision team co-chairs, we had a kickoff meeting with the co-chairs who are leading that, which President Jim led. And then after that meeting, we sent out invitations to those 50 to join the vision teams. And we held a kickoff with all of those people in the Hall of Presidents, again, led by President Jim, on December 15th. On the original timeline, I'll just note, and that's the one thing that I'll refer back to that original document, we had this really important caveat where we said, vision teams begin to meet weekly to develop strategies and refine guidepost goals. Spring classes begin January 20th, 2026. 10-month faculty typically return to campus on the same date and are not generally available to 2 weeks prior. Process should include a method by which these faculty are fully included to support buy-in and increase transparency. And so as 10-month faculty members are not fully on contract, we've given the vision teams the option to begin meeting, and many have already begun meeting. But much of that work for these vision teams is going to begin here in full force in the coming days. President Jim is going to be meeting weekly weekly with those co-chairs of those groups so they don't get too far along and kind of veer off course and come back with something that is surprising. And we've led us all the way up to this January 5th, where a number of those division teams have been meeting. I'll also just note, Madam Vice Rector, we will, as those teams are meeting, we are not pausing and saying, we'll just see kind of what they come back with. As division heads and as co-chairs, the co-chairs and I just met yesterday, we are also continuing to look at metrics on our own, looking at refining strategies, and we will, as we're checking in and having those meetings, we will continue to do our work alongside them in parallel as kind of ambidextrous leadership style there in terms of management. To Chris and to the co-chairs and to President Jim, what else have I missed here in terms of the check marks? But if you look at that updated document there, Board of Visitors members, which is now on the onboard system, it's been a sprint in terms of, especially if for higher education, but we're really excited, especially about the buy-in thus far that we've gotten from campus. There's a lot of interest in being part of refining those strategies and those metrics and where we're going together. And then the Board of Visitors, of course, as you see here, looking forward, if we want to get to that point, and maybe I'll pass it back to you, Terry, there are a number of other pieces that the Board of Visitors are going to be able to have a lot of input on. This is not that we'll see what the vision teams come up with and then it's too far and we're moving forward. This is all going to be coming back to the Strategic Planning Committee, coming back to the retreat, coming back to the full board. They will come back to us with those reports on March 13th, and you'll note a number of other touch points after that the board will have as we receive those reports from leadership on campus.
Thank you, David. That's very helpful. A couple points for the board and make sure that we're all aligned. We did approve the 3 of the 4 pillars at the last board meeting, and the last one was getting refined. So my question, David, there is, do you see any significant changes coming from the visioning sessions that you're having with the leaders that are leaning you one way or another on? Are they pretty rock solid, or do you think that something will change significantly?
And I may pass that one to President Jim, because I know he's had experience in the past where sometimes 4 pillars become 3, sometimes they split off, and he's had some great experience with that. I may pass that question to him. And we can't hear you, Jim.
Does that work?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
The fact that I could diagnose it was pretty impressive. So thank you, David and Madam Chair. We, in the past, where I've seen it happen is sometimes there's just some convergence. I re-reviewed the materials yesterday, and I believe that, I think the pillars that we have are solid. So I think everything that's contained in those pillars will continue in terms of that being a focus of the strategic plan. It's possible as we go through the process that we may tweak language. It's possible, although I don't see it happening in this case, where sometimes 2 pillars become one larger pillar that's overlapping. So certainly the work that happened early on in the process and the emphases of the strategic plan as defined by the pillars and approved by the board, I believe that will continue. It just leave open the notion there could be some minor wordsmithing, editing, and in some cases either combining or further splitting them just to try to make the plan more digestible, more meaningful as we move forward.
Any questions from the board members on that plan on the pillars?
Yes, President Jim, if I may, I know that I recall in November that we had some discussion about how to characterize the 4th pillar, what the right language was. Could you just tell us from your point of view right now, understanding the comments you just made about modifications going forward that are possible, can you lay out what your view of the 4 pillars is at this point, the language you want associated with each of those?
Yep, and I'm looking and a little embarrassed that I have everything else in front of me. Give me just a minute to pull that back up so I can refer to them specifically.
That's okay. It makes us all feel better.
Well, that's good. It's Monday morning and I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so my apologies on that on top of
But
it.
be careful, it's not
David,
this flu going around. It's
And Chris,
terrible.
if you do, Chris,
David,
it
if you
might
have
be-
access to this page, it
Yeah,
would pull it up easy for
let's see
Jim.
if we've got that, the one that moved from board to the new one.
Yes, the one we looked at in November, and there was a lot of discussion about language. That's why I'd like to go back to it just for a minute.
Yeah, so obviously the 4 pillars as we have them: delivering a transformational student experience, enhancing the value, purpose, and impact of JMU education through the Madison Promise. So, this certainly captures what the board led with as the number one piece. What's buried within here, I think, are some really exciting opportunities. And I know that one is a particular focus. So I see this being a huge piece of what will be in the strategic plan, conversations around actual employment and standing behind our graduates, the whole civil dialogue piece. This is central to who JMU has been, but it's a line to double down, brand and market this effort in a more clear, surprising way. Charting a new path towards a national research university, that one really speaks towards itself. It's embracing our research mission, and it's exploring our own path to move forward to be a research institution, and it presumes that we will be a Research One institution in a period of time. The fostering the partnerships to meet the needs of the Shenandoah Valley Commonwealth and the nation, also central to our a core mission as an institution, but this is notion that our path forward will be a collaborative one by leveraging the strengths of various partners in the region, the Commonwealth, and beyond. And the final one, which had the most discussion, creating an innovative campus community. And I think that this language has been updated since the language we originally discussed. And I think the original proposed pillar in front of the board use the word building. And so what I think this revised language does is do a nice job of saying innovation will happen in many ways. And innovation is a core value. And if you forced me to say what's one of the thing that's most important for JMU moving forward is to continually innovate. Obviously, our approach to buildings, our approach to how we do partnerships, our approach to how we engage with the region, the Commonwealth, how we have students at the middle of everything. There's innovation opportunities within all that. So I think it's broad, and it also sends a message in each of these statements to where we're going as an institution. The actual plan will breathe life into it, and the implementation phase of that will say exactly where we're going to start with our efforts.
And Jim, given that new language on Pillar 4, which I like a lot, would you envision the whole culture initiative around innovation and risk taking also being under that Pillar 4?
Yeah, thank you, Carly. That's a really important point. That's at the central core of that. And we have a retreat scheduled with my leadership team at the end of the month. I'm bringing in a resource. And we're going to start with trust, right? So we have to start with how do we get out of our silos, and therefore how do we build further levels of trust in the leadership levels across the institution, and then to start talking about how do you take that energy, approach our strategic plan by using innovation. And one of those cultural shifts is really around risk-taking and the ability to celebrate failure where it happens. Public institutions in particular, but higher ed generally, is very risk-averse and unwilling to take thoughtful, reasonable risks. And this notion, if we're not failing enough, we're not trying and pushing ourselves hard enough in service to the Commonwealth and our students.
Great. Thank
Carly,
you.
does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Thank you so
Super.
much.
Thank you. And I look at the original timeline, and it looks like one of the things that we had was that the board members would participate in the visioning sessions in some part, and I don't know if that has been done yet, David or Jim, you have that scheduled for January or February? But
we've had a number of board members participating throughout the entire fall. I think we did put out invitations. Certainly wasn't an expectation that all board members would make each of these visiting sessions, but all of the remote visioning sessions I did across the Commonwealth, We had at least one board member there to introduce me to manage the dialogue. I think we've scheduled a couple of the ones that were on campus. We tried to do it when the board was already meeting here. And, you know, schedules are just such. I would say that we've had probably half of the board has been engaged in at least one of the visioning sessions.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
2/3.
On the committee, has anyone on the committee been on the vision? I have not been on there, so maybe Suzanne or Carly, Dave.
Yeah, I have.
Carly has, great. Anybody else? If we could circle back around and maybe make those visioning sessions known to the committee members, and our goal would be to add the committee members to at least one visioning session. That would be helpful. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks so much. And then the other is, on our original timeline, we said that we were going to hold a special strategic planning committee and share the report or preliminary reports with the board. And I think that's what this meeting is today, to give an update. There was some questions. I had questions about our metrics. And I think that we'll speak to the metrics as we talk about the progress of the work that I believe this morning that Bethany Blackstone and Sheila Smith will walk through for us. If that's okay, I'd like to move to the second one. One of the areas that we talked about at the board level was how do we integrate the financial plan and the campus development plan along with this work, knowing that by April we will have a hard plan. And I'm thinking April seems very close, like 12 weeks away from me. And so I'd ask Jim if he would speak a little bit about that, and maybe Dave Rexroad from your facilities planning that you're working on. Steve Smith was not able to be here from the Finance Committee. I don't know if Tawana's on the call or not, but anyone from the Finance Committee on this? Okay, Carly, if you could just think through that lens. So we'll start with Jim and Dave and just think through how are you aligning those things along with this plan as well for the next, say, 12 to 14 weeks. What do you need from them?
Yeah, it's an alignment, and as I've used in my public presentations, it's also a convergence of all of these things that are coming together. The institution's been financially well managed in the past. We understand the strengths and weaknesses of our finance. That's partly why I'm going to be spending so much time in Richmond, is that I don't know that I can expect much this particular session given the limited revenues that are available, but we need to be planting the seeds and needing to be prepared when there are resources to try to adjust, lifting JMU from the bottom of the heap in terms of funding. Finance is largely driven, besides the state purse, by enrollment. And so everything has really been focused on making sure that we have ways to really break through to being classified, as I've stated, a solidly strong university where we have students waiting in line to get in. And we do it because we're going to be known for outcomes, because of our surprising approach to things that really differentiate us in the marketplace. So that's really the core of the finances, obviously, in terms of bringing in revenue. And then, of course, making sure we're really good stewards of those revenues when we have them. The campus master development plan had been underway before I was selected. Again, we saw the initial planning in Williamsburg. I kind of raised my early observations about what I saw as some of the strengths of the plan and some of the weaknesses. I think it did a fairly good job of identifying academic space needs. It identified the problem that we have in student housing that was going to become a crisis if we could not get on top of that. It speculated on what stadium expansion might look like. So I supported all of those kinds of things, at least identifying the issue. This wasn't about a specific design. It was about trying to evaluate how the campus physical development needed to change. One of the things that I identified is that I didn't think it made sense to put $80 or $90 million more into a student union building that had, in my opinion, bad bones and had lost its purpose as an important facility. And yet, the campus very much needs the space, the ability to have large gatherings, the ability to be an active hub for students. And so even last June, I'd identified that. as we began to take a look at how we might breathe life into that plan, balancing the finances, I had raised at the Williamsburg conversation the notion of bringing in some assistance through some contacts I'd had previously to maybe reimagine how we go about the process of financing campus development and how we can be more creative. Higher ed has a reputation of having a need, build the building, have the need, build the building, without trying to figure out better how to integrate it. And so as we're having these conversations, many of these are still in confidential settings because it deals with real estate contracts and some other things. I think that we've been very creative in thinking about how we might bring multiple needs together into a more concentrated area so that in a stadium, for example, if you expand the stadium, some of the biggest cost is not in adding seats. It's everything you need to be able to support the people who are sitting in the seats in the stadium. So it's corridors, it's stairwells, it's elevators or escalators, it's commercial kitchens to be able to feed them. It's to have enough restrooms to be able to make sure people can meet those needs, that you can have proper egress in case there is some kind of emergency. All of that is a lot of brick and mortar and a lot of expense for something that is otherwise 6, maybe 7 games a year. So we've talked about how we can make it more into an events complex for summer music festivals or arts festivals. How do we bring more programming into that space to make use of all that infrastructure as opposed to only 6 or 7 times a year? If we're going to expand student housing, we're going to need places to feed more students. And so we're in the process with the Campus Development Committee of taking a look at how we might be able to leverage that, how we can bring other partners together, and how can we do it without creating extraordinary debt, extraordinary fees, or other obligations. So again, how can we work with the private sector? So having said that, that's that overview that all of these things need to converge with the strategic plan. Obviously, that 4th pillar of the strategic plan is there, but in pillar 1, we're talking about the student experience, and we want to make sure that we're there to meet those needs. And it also leverages the partnership pillar that I had just mentioned as well.
So let me ask the question a different way because I think I might have been misunderstood. We've got somebody from the Finance Committee here and somebody from the Master Facility Campus Development Plan. When I look at the check-in dates, should we add to the timeline specific check-in dates with those committees, like after the strategic planning in February and March, so that when we go in April to the board, we've got a unified plan? So I'll look at Dave Rexroad. How do you think that would work? And then Carly, if you could speak, what do you think on the Finance Committee, how that would work?
I mean, I think from to President Jim's point, the work is being done pretty aggressively, and I think the board will see a more detailed plan at our next meeting. So I don't know that we're necessarily going to need, additional time to do that, because I think the board will see that at our upcoming meeting.
Okay, and then coordinating what you might propose with Carly with the financing, or is there a connection there?
Yes, I think it's fair to say that this came up a lot in our November Finance Committee meeting. Obviously, we spend a lot of time in that committee under Steve's leadership looking at facilities and the capital plan associated with that. And so I think the connections are pretty clear. And so I agree with Dave. I think this is naturally going to come up on the agenda. And if there are glaring inconsistencies, it will be obvious.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from both of you is you don't need a separate meeting to walk through the elements. You're okay with it being presented in April, having worked through the Finance Committee and the Campus Development Plan Committee prior to that.
Yes, I think what Dave is saying, and I agree with him, is I think we will start to see this in February. We started to see it in November. You could see where the connections were. And I'm anticipating there will be more detail presented in the February meetings consistent with the progress that's been made since November.
Okay. Any questions from other members?
And I
Okay,
would add, Terry, if I might, February 2nd, the campus development group will be meeting again. And I'll just also remind that Steve Smith, Chair of Finance, is on the campus development working group as well. So for questions and others, that he's part of that, but not here today.
okay, super. Okay, great, thanks. So through the regular board meetings, you'll feel like you'll be apprised. David, would you like to move on to, Jim, is there anything else you want to say on the integration? It sounds like we have a plan. We're ready to go.
Yes.
Okay, super. You want to move on to the strategic planning co-chairs? Really appreciate Bethany being here as well as Sheila Smith. So Bethany and Sheila, I'll turn it over to you.
And I will add, as they're getting their mics off, I also want to recognize Chris Oram, who's been doing the lion's share of administrative work, especially behind the scenes. He's here, Jennifer Campfield from Academic Affairs, and Patrice Ludwig and Reddy, who may contribute into this point too, but want to acknowledge all of those three, their work as well, along with the co-chairs.
Great, thank you so much.
Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'm Sheila Smith. I serve as the Senior Associate Vice President for Philanthropy and Engagement. Bethany and I are happy to be here with you this morning. Duran, unfortunately, had another conflict and could not participate. As you heard from David, we are off to the races. We are up and running. We held our kickoff for our Vision Team chairs on December 5th and recruited the teams to fill approximately 60 different spots from over 200 applications across campus. I'm very excited about the teams that we've developed. I think they represent a great deal of the university campus. They're very diverse groups with different backgrounds, different experiences, making up our 7 different vision teams, and then also the 7 subgroups that fall underneath those vision teams. And they've already started meeting. I know they might have thought they were going to wait until classes start up again, but nope, they're off and running. Very mindful of that March 13th deadline for their reports. The teams are also supported not only by the co-chairs, but also by division heads. And then we've also curated a list of university subject matter experts for them, people that they can reach out to with any questions, get some more perspective. As you can imagine, we've had a lot of work that's already been done on things like workforce, or Weebles as we call them, as far as power skills, things that people are focused on. We have a lot of expertise within the university community, so they'll be able to tap into that as well. As you know, the vision teams are really charged with exploring the strategies that are developed in the plan and help identify what are the opportunities, what are the risks, so that division heads and President Jim can make some final decisions about what will be included in the final plan. We're also working hard on trying to have a path forward for socializing the strategic plan with the university community, making sure that President Jim has time with academic council, our employee advisory committee, as well as the Student Government Association. We'll also be meeting with having a variety of different town halls and forums for, again, opportunity for people to hear about the status of the plan, to provide feedback, and to help direct the plan as we move forward. So we're still in the planning stage for all of that, and we'll be sure to share those updates with you as we move forward. We just want to make sure that we have touch points and opportunities for the campus community to provide feedback. And Chris has also talked about wanting to do a survey, just again, another opportunity for the campus community to provide feedback. As far as the metrics and refining those metrics, we'll continue to work with division heads and President Jim to make sure that those are fine-tuned and well understood, and that we feel that we have the right numbers and the right targets and the right categories in place in the strategic plan. Bethany, what did I miss? What do we need to elaborate on?
I think you hit all the high notes. I'll just add that the way that we have framed the vision team's work is that teams are assigned one major strategy that emerged from the earlier listening stage of the process. And they each have a list of kind of key questions to address that would help us take stock of the sort of path to feasibility for each of those strategies. And that's been their charge, to sort of say, how do we get from where we are now to these big audacious goals? And again, to echo Sheila, the groups are hard at work, as I know from my email inbox, wherein I keep receiving messages about, hey, can we jump on a call? Can we get some feedback? And so I think that we have taken heed of President Jim's sort of advice to try to keep the ideas and the goals audacious, but also we're sort of moving into a phase where we are kind of checking the limits of sort of getting a sense of, but what would it take to do this? And so our expectation is that the division heads will have a great kind of set of recommendations from the vision teams that will allow them to sort of fashion the plan based on those inputs and all the legwork and research that the vision teams are undertaking.
Great. What questions do committee members have of either Bethany or Sheila? Carly?
So, Madam Chair, if I may ask, obviously this is an incredibly comprehensive process that President Jim is leading, and that David and Chris and Sheila and Bethany and all of you are participating in. And that gives me, and I'm sure the other trustees as well, a sense of the thoroughness of this approach. I want to zero in, if I may, on your discussion of metrics. And the reason I'd like to understand that a little better is because, to me, goals and metrics are two-sided. If on the one hand, a metric and a goal drives behavior and allows us to assess progress against a strategic objective. On the other hand, the establishment of a goal also has trade-offs associated with it. And I think where the board can be most useful and our governance responsibilities point us toward is really understanding what are the trade-offs associated with the selection of those particular metrics and goals. And let me give you an example. Our second strategic pillar is about becoming a national research university, and the stated goal right now is to become an R1 university. At the same time, we know that allowing undergraduates to participate in our research agenda is an incredibly important and unique part of the student experience we provide, and is incredibly maturing and helpful to the students who have an opportunity as undergraduates to participate. But there are some trade-offs I have been led to understand. There are some trade-offs between how fast we become an R1 university and how quickly, therefore, we have to push research in the postgraduate arena. And so I think that would be an example of where I, as a trustee, would like to understand what trade-offs are we making here when we say we want to be an R1 university by X date. Are some of those trade-offs around the undergraduate experience or not? And I'm sure there are many examples in these other pillars as well. So I know that's a mouthful, but I think understanding the trade-offs that are getting made before we establish those final metrics and goals to chart our progress would be extremely important for this committee and for the full board during our retreat.
Great, thank you so much. We previewed that we might call in and assist for questions, especially related to the plan level metrics. And so certainly it is a key priority for this period while the vision teams are doing their work for the division heads and the president to sort of spend more time on the refining these metrics. But I'll let the president, Chris or David, jump in to sort of provide more substance on how to make sure that you all get the information that you need about the trade-offs that they're weighing.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany, and thank you, Carly, for the question and the observation. Certainly, there are limitations to everything, and I'm a big believer in trying to measure the opportunity costs of investments in one area. What's that doing to prevent us from doing something in the other area? I don't remember if in this committee we've had. I've talked a little bit about how I'm seeing this more fully coming together. I'm brand new. This board asked me to be bold, be audacious, start punching above our weight in many areas and to really raise the prominence of the institution. And yet strategic plans are usually only written for a 5 or 6 year period of time, and we're contemplating this one to be a 5-year period of time. And yet, as it's been coming together, it's clear to me that we're also establishing a vision for 2040, and the plan will likely take us through 2030. And as I got to that realization, my question is, why doesn't every university work this way? Because the strategies you'd use to achieve specific metrics by 2030 will be different if we're planning to stop there at 2030. And it's in fact far more valuable to an institution to say, yep, by 2030, we want to reach this point, but by 2040, we want to reach this point. So how we go about designing our work and making those decisions needs to propel us through the 2030 point towards this vision that's in 2040. So I would argue that it seems clear to me that we will be a Research One institution no later than 2040. And I think we will do it because of the trajectory we're on. And to your, just using as an example with your point, Carly, is that in the language we've said we want to double down on the undergraduate research experience and figure out how we can help use that undergraduate research experience to also propel us as a national university to reach R1. Currently, and these metrics can change, they can design differently, it's about the number of PhDs you're producing and how much in research expenditures you've got. Right now, we've been in the mid $20 million range in research expenses. We need to about double that to get to 50. Will we reach that by 2030? We're going to be taking a hard look in this process as we work with the team. What might strategies we use that would stay consistent with all of these things? Can we produce the number of doctoral degrees that we need to? That's going to take that deep dive and individual assessment. Well, we've already planned to increase the number of physician assistants or DNPs, or I just met with the dean right before this meeting, another new program that we might have. Where can we expand that? So baked into this next 2-3 months of process with our faculty and some of the best thinkers on our campus, they're going to be diving directly into each of those. And I will ask them, and so I appreciate the question. I apologize my answer is so long. David and search committee chairs, let's try to do a good job at keeping track of saying, here's what we view as that trade-off. I don't think it'll always be, we can either do this or this. That's what Stephen Covey called the sucker's choice. I believe we can do different things to actually still be able to drive both as key things. We led with the student experience as the number one guidance from the board's number one pillar. Then we addressed the research thing. Without addressing it, I don't think we have a strategic plan, again, through partnerships and innovation throughout the campus.
Well, I appreciate that answer very much, Jim. And first of all, my question was a bit long as well, so it's fair that your answer is long. But what you said, among other things, in your very helpful answer is that time is a dynamic here as well. And so understanding that is really useful, because you might come back and say, hey, look, we decided we want to be an R1 university, but we're not willing we're not willing or able, we don't choose the trade-off that says we're going to have sufficient numbers of PhDs by 2030 to do that. But we do think we can get ourselves on a trajectory to have the sufficient number of PhDs as well as undergraduate research by 2035 or 2040. So that's really helpful to understand. And to the extent that you can illuminate for us as a board, and particularly in the retreat, those trade-offs over time, because I completely agree with you. You think about a 5-year strategic plan differently if you're looking at a vision out in 2040 than if you're stopping in 2031. So that time dimension is critical for us to understand as well.
Great. Very, very constructive conversation. Any other questions from other committee members? Jeff?
I just want to thank Carly for bringing that up. What she's calling trade-offs, I think also associated with any strategic plan is the risk involved in it. And I think that somehow that we capture that this is a bold plan and we want to be audacious, but we also want to acknowledge that there's risk and we've got risk management plans to deal with that. Thanks.
Really good point.
Very good. Any other comments, Dave? Anything from you or Nicole? No?
None from me. Thanks, Terry.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think this completes what we were going to achieve today, David, unless I missed something. So I have as my notes that we will, we've already agreed that in the February meetings, the finance and master facility plan work will be updated and coordinated with strategic plan. We really do appreciate, Sheila, the work that you're doing, and Bethany, and the excitement that you have from getting the teams all involved and getting them thinking creatively. And thank you, Chris, for navigating it for us as well. And I think probably Jim and David will know I'm all about the metrics and all about the end result. And then all of those things are how do you get there? And I agree with Carly, there's going to be trade-offs. There's going to be some, maybe we wanted to raise 21 million in research expended, research, but maybe in order to get to where we need to go, it's going to be 18 or 28. But I really feel firmly, and I appreciate Sheila and Bethany guiding people as we come up with these great ideas, tying it back to something that the board can measure and say, this is what success looks like in 2030 and 2040 going down the road. So thank you so much. Michael, is there anything that you might want to add? I'm just making sure I touch base with everyone here.
Well,
You're good? Suzanne, does this seem like it's on the right trajectory for what you're planning?
Yes, I think we got a lot of work to do, but this is a helpful conversation to get us jump started to get to our end goal in April.
Okay, super. Jack, you have the governance portion and you have our retreat plan. Is there anything that you need from this committee to be ready for, or others as part of the governance plan in April?
Yeah, tons, but nothing right now.
Okay. Okay. I like all your gadgets in the background. That would make me anxious if I looked at that.
I feel like I haven't been reminded enough from Jack about when our retreat is and where it is. I feel like last time this was a bit more ingrained at this point.
We'll get on it. We'll get right on it.
Okay. All right. Oh, great. I appreciate, David, just a sidebar. I appreciate you getting all the dates out on our calendar so we know kind of what's coming up in the next 6 months, because it does seem to be a lot. So hopefully everyone has seen that. Jim, any final comments before we end the meeting?
No, well, I do. I appreciate the attention of the Board of Visitors on the strategic plan. It is clearly a pivotal moment for the university. There's a great deal of enthusiasm, excitement. I believe that we have the right people on these different working groups. I've had very good feedback across the campus about the way that we put those groups together. And I'm going, I appreciate the board's patience and letting the campus part of the process come through. The best plan is the one that can be implemented and can leverage the enthusiasm and energy and the talent of our people. And so it's really important that I give them that space and respect to be able to do that. As David said, I'm going to be interacting with the leadership of those weekly so that they don't go astray. But the campus needs to believe that it's their plan and that they had a huge hand in building it. So again, I just want to thank the Board of Visitors' support for allowing the campus part of the process in these next several months to move.
Thank you so much.
Frankly, in lightning speed.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. You might set the new standard for academic strategic planning, right? One last thing, I did ask Jim to take a look at our mission and our vision. It is a little, it's been there for about 3 or 4 years or longer. And is that really consistent with what we want to do today? So we probably will send, maybe I'll have David send that out to all the committee members. And in February, let's take a look at that again and see how that fits into the overall picture. Does that sound good? All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you in a month.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.